Colin, you were talking about the Commodore and the fact that you've done some live recording there and some filming, and it kind of occurred to me that you probably have a long history with the Commodore Ballroom in Vancouver.
Yeah, I mean, from the first time I was there when I was 16, when I wasn't let in because I was underage and I tried to get in, I was out to Vancouver. I flew up from Regina to go see the Specials and the Police play the PNE. And I remember going, oh, Powder Blues are playing down at the Commodore, I gotta go. And I went, you know, just, yep, you know, let me in. And of course, you're underage, and so I wasn't let in. So that was my first experience with the Commodore. And then years later, I saw Stevie Ray Vaughan at the Commodore, which is like the best show ever, because that room does something to if you're cooking in that room, that room will take off. There's something about the Commodore, just the way it's sonically built, not unlike the Metropolis in Montreal, where you're playing a bar, but it's something about it that it just, it could just lift. I remember seeing Stevie Ray Vaughan in that room, and he just literally seemed to hover above the stage. He was just so good that night. But I sold out 5 nights years ago. It was
Fantastic.
a big kind of deal at the time, and tragically hip hop done the same.
Yeah.
There's a few people on the list that have done it, I think, 3 or 4 bands. But so, and then we started playing more soft theaters, and we got out of playing the Commodore, and I really missed it. And this time around, it just so worked out we decided to go for 3 nights at the Commodore instead of the Orpheum. And it just turned out being fantastic. We just had such a good time, and we happened to have cameras rolling on the Saturday night, which ended up being the best night. So usually the confluence of that stuff doesn't work out, you know, your best intentions and then your best nights on the Thursday, and nobody was there, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it just so happened we had a great night on that night, and we're going to compile it all for a live record over the 3 nights and sound checks. So there's a lot of material.
I remember seeing you there with Long John Baldry.
Oh, it was his like special birthday too.
That's right. It
Yeah.
was.
Yeah.
That was a great evening too.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I remember that.
Colin, congratulations on your latest recording, 15. I think it's wonderful, and one of the things that really stands out for me is the vocal tracks and how great you sound on the record.
Oh, thank you.
How do you feel about your vocals at this point in your career?
Well, it's funny, but I was saying this the other day. I think some people, like John Lydon from the Sex Pistols, perhaps, his voice was perfect for what he did on that record in 1977. But especially in R&B and blues, you know, I think when you're in your early 20s, you just don't know enough about it. I listen to Why July, and I sound like someone who doesn't know his voice yet. I'm looking for low notes. I could tell I'm totally unsure of myself. And although, you know, it's easy to get sentimental, but the reality is I don't think I started singing properly until like maybe around National Steel is when I really started kind of getting my head around singing better. And I think it was just you stop trying to emulate anybody and you just start singing for singing's sake, and I think that's when it starts getting good. So I figure I'm just kind of getting my feet now, you know. So it feels really good because I think it bodes well for what the music I want to get into next. I think I've been listening to a lot of Bill Withers lately.
Oh, great.
And J.J. Cale. So that's kind of loosely is kind of where I see myself going a little bit next. But
yeah.
I've said that before and then changed directions at the last minute, so you never know.
I've heard you kind of break out into songs, you know, over a meal, walking down the hallway in the green room or something like that. And there must be some kind of a mental process where you're thinking Sam Cooke or something, and all of a sudden you do this little.
Oh, I'll call it like last night in the car on the way up, we were singing, trading songs. And it's just, you're always searching for that thing, you know. Lately we've been doing Going Away by Jimmy Rogers. Now, I've been not good on doing it every night because no one knows that I've never recorded it. But years ago I did a demo of it, and it was really quite good with the drum machine, but I really programmed the drums quite well for what it was. And so sometimes old songs pop up and all of a sudden, boom, it's on your next record. You know, you never know. I keep lists, and I've already got a list of little big band 4 possibilities.
Great.
I'm always working on the background, you know.
Yeah. This is the 4th project that you've done with Joe Hardy,
yeah.
as in this case a co-producer,
mm-hmm.
and you both do some engineering and work very closely.
I did engineer this record somewhat, a little bit here and there, yeah.
In your home studio? Right?
In my home studio. Well, yeah. Joe had, you know, Joe stayed for quite a while, but he went back to Houston. And Oh Well, for instance, we weren't going to release Oh Well. It was sitting on the board. We have a board, and there was no check marks on it because we decided to let it go. And I went in there late one night. That's the nice thing about having a studio in your house. And I just said, I got to hear that again. Because the drummer slammed that track. And I went, oh my God, I can't let that sit in the can. So I went and I put a put a mic on the cone, and that was it. And I engineered it myself and sent it to Joe, and we had a system. Often he's an odd bird. He sleeps at odd hours. He goes to bed sometimes at 10 at night and gets up at 2. So I'd finish at 2, send it to him, and I wake up and he'd already have it mixed in the song into the mastering chain.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah.
I love Joe. Joe is a producer's dream. He's a great technician. He's Mensa smart. I mean, when I say he actually scores high on Mensa tests, he's crazy smart. And he doesn't stand on ceremony, you know. He's not one of these guys, well, I don't want to come up to Vancouver, I'm sorry, you're going to have to come to Houston. Or never. He's so accommodating and kind and funny. And I just have nothing but the best things to say about him. And you know, when I did Little Big Band 2, he wouldn't be the first producer that would come to mind. He's kind of pretty modern in his sound. He's quite pop-driven. You know, all the stuff he's done on this new ZZ Top record. Although it says it's produced by Rick Rubin, fact is Joe does the trench work, you know. And Joe, we wouldn't have thought about him for the Little Big Band 2, but I thought he did a bang-up job on that record. So he's really versatile, and I just think the world of him.
I'm glad you brought up Oh Well, because it's one of my favorite songs on the record. And of course, it's an old Fleetwood Mac, Peter Green tune. And I wonder, have you played it for Mick Fleetwood?
Well, I haven't had it. I imagine Hutch might have, because Hutch lives in Maui, and so does Mick. I got to go to Mick's house last year up in Maui and do a rehearsal with him and his band, and I got to sit in on Black Magic Woman at a club in Kihei with him, and we did that one and Shake Your Money Maker and some other songs, and it was a thrill, man. Mick's grandmother was 95 in the front row in her wheelchair, and she lives on one of the properties. He's got a place by the water and a place up in the hills, and it was a thrill, you know. Right when you think it's just so neat to see a guy like Fleetwood Mac in Chicago. Yes. That record. Yeah. I mean, I bought it again on vinyl the other day, and I just can't get enough of that record. I always thought it was so brilliant. Still sounds fresh as a daisy today because they didn't put any reverb on it, so it's really dry. And so it was a thrill, and I don't know if he's heard the version yet. I'll have to ask Hutch if he's played it to him or not.
Well, of course, Mick Fleetwood's drumming on all that Fleetwood Mac stuff. I mean, he's the only kind of blues drummer that goes to the tom-toms all the time, right?
Yeah.
And it's so distinctive.
Well, yeah, and you gotta, everyone who's played with, I mean, they've had some issues guitar-wise, people who have played with Mick. I mean, I was going through the history of some of his players, and in between Peter Green's, well-documented bipolar, he's
right.
Depressive.
Yeah.
And then some of the other guys have had some strange things. Rick Vito, I met Rick Vito over there, and he was playing with him, and he's a great player. I didn't realize all those years with Bonnie Raitt and all that stuff. Yeah.
I wanted to ask you about some of the writing that you did on 15 and the process of writing with so many great writers that you work with. And maybe we could start with Gordy Johnson. And in some ways you have a mutual history and love of certain kinds of music with Gordy Johnson.
Yeah, well, we're both prairie guys. We're both, I've always used blues as a bass. I met him in '86, I think, when he was doing more of a kind of a slick Django Reinhardt kind of routine. That's what I remember at the time. I remember me and Colin Linden and Gordy sitting in at a club in Toronto, and he was doing more of that kind of thing. And then I heard Big Wreck. But through all those years, we never had a chance to sit and play with each other and just write songs or do anything like that. We sat around, partied, and had a couple drinks before. So it was really cool. He came up, and we just had great luck, and I really have a lot of respect for his ears. He's got a real way in the studio, and I didn't know that. Like, I knew his record sounded pretty cool, and he was pretty brave with his mixes, but wow, he's really talented.
Sweet's Gone Sour is a great tune.
I love doing that song, It's so nice when you get a new one in your collection. It's like Man's Gotta Be a Stone a few years ago. Yeah. I always can count on it now. It's become a staple in my show, and anytime you get one of those that last, and I think Sweet's Gone Sour is going to become one of those, just because it's got that kind of sassy Stone strut, and I love it.
Tom Wilson is somebody you've had a long songwriting relationship with.
Yeah.
And, seems he would be a fun guy to work with.
Tom's one of my best friends in the world. He's crazy in such good ways. He's painted one of my amps that's out there right now. He paints the front of, if you ask him, really nicely. He'll do this certain painting he does on your grill. So you'll notice, I don't know if we have it running, but we've had in the last couple nights. But he's a great painter too. Yeah. But that guy's just one of the most creative guys, you know. Tom's always just being tapped into, great way with lyrics, great dark thing he does with lyrics that lots of kind of religious connotation, and he just knows how to work that stuff so well. But he and I, like, I have 3 songs on the new Black in the Rodeos record because me and Tom and I write all the time together. So when it doesn't work for me or if it's too country. So Lucinda sang on the song that we wrote together. Great. So I got Lucinda singing one of my songs. So awesome.
Could you talk about the process of how you approach, say, writing with a Gordy or Tom Wilson, as far as you know, the physical arrangements? I mean, do you just jump in, sit down, and do it?
Jump in. There's usually a leap of faith, you know, and sometimes it works, and sometimes it can be really disheartening. So you got to be prepared for looking at the person and going, "Do you want to go have some coffee?" You know. You have those times. I didn't have any of those on this record. Ron was very great. He came in with 3 kind of ideas. We finished them all. Only one made the record, but it's a great song. He's already sent me another song for my next project, which is excellent. So I'm really pumped that we've got a connection now. Tom and I, you know, have always written a lot together. So, you know, it's a hard thing, and sometimes it's an idea, it's a title that you wrote doing something one day and someone says something and you go, no. And then it's keeping track of all that. That's so hard. Yeah. Man's Got to Be a Stone. I mean, that one came from a session where we had written 2 songs that day and I had scrawled it out on a piece of paper and everyone says, let's break for the day. And I said, come on, man. It took, you know, it's hard to get everyone together. I had to go all the way to almost the American borders near Windsor, you know. So there's me and Tom and Tog Salter and, you know, I said, come on, it's almost there. Man's Gotta Be a Stone. How hard can it be? And everyone said, all right. Bam, you know, it was one of the strongest songs on the thing. So you just never know. Someone wrote me the other day on Facebook and said, you know, I'm a writer, what advice do you have to give? And I'm someone who never considered myself a writer first and foremost. I've always been a player. And writing came not so easy, you know, it's the hardest thing about the business. Bryan Adams has always said that, that's the hard part, you know, and it is. It's, because it can be so disappointing. You want it to work so bad. And, but it's just don't discount anything. Don't discount even the smallest bud of an idea. Even if it's a cool 2 chords that sound good together, because that could be the seed of your next smash, you know. You just never know.
Colin, I promise I won't go too far back and ask too many questions, but it occurred to me that in 1988, here you are, you've got your first record out, and you're in your early 20s, and you're from Regina, and all of a sudden you're opening up for Keith Richards on tour. And just curious on how that experience was and what your memory of that tour was.
Well, I remember the day that we were told we got it, and I just, yes! Like, we were playing a little bar in Kamloops when I got told we were going to open up like 10 shows for Keith through the States, and I just so excited. And just so excited. And we did a string of shows, and I, you know, got to know everyone real well. Waddy Wattel's, you know, I just saw him a little while ago. I've maintained a friendship with Waddy all these years, and you know, it was just fantastic. I got a picture of me and Keith from that time. He's probably younger than I am now in the shot, you know, and just, and I think it's probably what helped me later on, you know, open up for the Stones years later. My relationship with Chris Kimsey, of course, didn't hurt there either. Yeah. But no, it was unbelievable. I mean, hard to imagine, and that was maybe the best rock and roll band of all time. Charlie Drayton, Steve Jordan, you know, Waddy Wattel, Keith. I mean, and then the guy who sang backups for the Stones, Bernard Fowler.
Oh yeah, right.
Oh my God! I mean, that band, it was just. So, it was so fresh, you know. When that record came out, Take It So Hard, and everyone back then was into that big snares, you know, and all of a sudden they used a piccolo tuned high, no reverb on it. It was so groundbreaking, you know. I wish Keith would make more records because I love his records.
You did a wonderful tribute. You contributed to a tribute to Howlin Wolf record.
Oh, right.
With some legends, of course, many who aren't with us anymore. Looking back at some of the blues artists you've worked with and some of the projects you've done, especially the tribute to Howlin Wolf record, in retrospect, you must be very gratified that you had an opportunity to do some of those things.
Every one of those moments. Yank Rochelle, years ago when I played with Yank Rochelle, I'll never forget that. I spent 3 days with an 80-year-old Delta blues musician, you know. I was like 18 years old. It was remarkable, you know. He was so fascinating. He was from Indianapolis. He was in those early, you know, kind of Yazoo records, those kind of early jug band. He wrote, he wrote She Caught the Katy. I remember seeing a check in his case for like, you know, I forget what it was, like $10,000, something huge, because the Blues Brothers did it, right?
Yeah, right.
But that was great. All the times I had a chance to play with Albert Collins, I mean, I look back on those now and I wish I could zoom myself back and do it again, you know, and amazing opportunities, you know, I'm so grateful for them.
Colin, as you know, November is Canadian Guitar Month on CBC Radio, and I'd love to get some of your thoughts on your favorite Canadian guitar players.
Well, I mean, I remember going to see David Wilcox when I was pretty young in Regina, and he was amazing, and he was nice to me. I remember going up to him and saying, hey, you know, could I talk to you a little bit after? And he was really cool and let me come back and talk, and that was really nice. I mean, all kinds of, even Art Bergman back then. I remember going and seeing Art Bergman play a couple things, and I remember watching him toss like a 1960s Strat, like 30 feet in the air, and have it just smash on the ground. I'm like, oh my God. But Colin Linden, I mean, I've known Colin since I was 13, and I just don't know if there's a better guitar player in this country. I mean, there's a lot of great players, but Colin's like one of those guys that you could know him forever, and you'll sit down and he'll just wail off a Big Bill Brunsey 3-part odyssey, you know, crazy, like crazily focused, you know, and I don't know, he's crazy, but I mean, he's, you know, he's just a soulful guy, Colin, and I just think he's just all around, he's just such a fine player.
Well, speaking of guitars, are you still collecting guitars the way you used to?
Yeah, I have one. I'm waiting on one right now. One more Strat. It'll put my, you know, I guess I've up 5 or 6 now. And now I start tuning some of them in E flat, some of them in E. So that's caused more guitars to be needed. I don't have enough of certain guitars. Gibson, I could use another hollow body. I let a 335 go years ago. I never should have let go. I let a 63 Tele go years ago. I never should have let go. I mean, I could go on. It's just sad, but I'm still collecting. I'm still looking. I went today to Avenue Guitars here. That's such a great store here in town. And no, we still got the fever. Actually, me and Chris Cadell. And Chris Cadell, by the way, who's playing with me, he's fantastic. And he grew up listening to me. It's so nice to have a guy in his 30s in my band who, he showed me a high school program of him. He was playing National Steel in his high school in grade 9 in like 95 or
wow.
96, or something like that. So it's just neat to see a younger generation coming up too.
Sure. Colin, thank you very much. It's always great to see you.
Indeed, Holger.
Thank you.
Awesome.